Hello, good evening, and welcome to Medcity's another live session. And today we're doing a session on IELTS speaking. Now, IELTS speaking is, I would say, a favorite module when it comes to preparation of IELTS. And a lot of you might have questions in mind as to how to approach this particular module. What are the things you need to keep in mind? So at the end of the session, you'll get all the tips required to learn all about IELTS speaking. It's a good evening and I can see people already joining us live. We have Naina Raj, Jessie Rachel, Vijit. It'll be great if you can also tell us where you're watching this live session from. So, isn't it, Shyam?
Yes. Good evening to everybody. As ma'am said, please let us know where you are logging in from for this live sessions. Well, we hope that the speaking tips that we provide today will be very helpful to you.
Yeah, so Shyam is here to help us with the speaking. So I'm planning to give you some samples on how you can improve. So probably we'll listen to his response and I'll give you feedback, and I'll also tell you the top do's and don'ts when you prepare for your IELTS speaking. All right. So before we get on to the active tips that I will share today, I can see a lot of you still sending in good evening. Hi, so good evening to all. Keep sending us your support as messages, and if you have any queries regarding IELTS speaking, all you need to do is put it up as a message on chat and I will respond to it live. So IELTS speaking is of course an exam that happens on a different day when compared to listening, reading and writing. So the exam happens in this order. First it goes with listening, then reading, writing. So these three exams modules happen on a single day. And for speaking in most of the countries, you have to sit another day for the test. It's a 14-minute long exam, and IELTS speaking has three parts to it. Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3. So what is the first tip of the day? Before I get to sharing about Part 1 of speaking, I would like to ask Shyam. Shyam, when you've spoken to our students, okay, or you've been interacting with students,
yes.
What are the top queries that you get regarding IELTS speaking? What are the questions that they have to ask about speaking?
Yeah, the most common question that I get is very basic. It's very simple. Will I be able to improve? Will I be able to tackle IELTS speaking?
Okay, so that is one question. Yes, like Shyam said, pops up every now and then. How will I improve on my speaking skills? What is it that I can do that I can perform much better when it comes to IELTS speaking? Well, the tip is definitely to always ensure you practice as much as possible. I would say not how many other times you practice, nothing is going to be enough. So you need to try and practice as much as possible. And for that, and to be able to practice, of course, if you're somebody alone, completely on your own, you can practice using the mirror or probably recording yourself, right?
Yes.
But other than that, you can rope in certain people who will be able to help you with your speaking, like a friend, a colleague, an acquaintance, maybe like, we're using our social media right now. When you're on Facebook, on Instagram, you have the possibilities of being able to get in touch with maybe native speakers of people from other country. So try to take help of such friends if you have to improve your speaking skills. So this is of course one top question that students have. How do I improve on my speaking? And as you practice your speaking, make sure you're recording your speaking every time and you play back, and then you can improve accordingly. So this is one question, Shyam, like how do I improve my speaking? Is there any other question then that students bring up?
Another common question that we always get is, how do I control my anxiety? Or even with the proper preparation that I've been doing, when I sit in front of the examiner, I'm not able to perform properly. What could I do better?
Okay, so if you are anxious about your performance, of course, anyone appearing for the test would be nervous, okay? No matter how confident you're in speaking, let's say you're somebody who's always good at speaking, you've done public speaking, you've won competitions, but the moment you're in the exam hall, the moment you know that you're being tested, you're being, evaluated, then that fear creeps in. And I would say that fear creeping in is always good, because you're always, I would say you never be super confident, but you're always careful, you're cautious, and that's important when you perform in your speaking test. Of course, a little bit of anxiety is good, a little bit of exam fear is definitely good. But what would be the problem is if you're, let's say overconfident, or you're like too scared of the exams and then you mess up. So that's where, practice helps, because if you practice sufficiently, the moment you gain confidence and the moment you're sure about what really happens in IELTS speaking, you know the format, you know the type of questions that will come. And if you know everything in and out, you're in a much better position to perform. So that exam fear, that anxiety will not creep into your preparation or in your performance on the day of the test. And there is a 24-hour rule that I would like to share with all of you. Now, this is something that I like sharing with my students as well. What is this 24-hour rule? Let's say I have my IELTS speaking exam on the 6th of May. So if I have my test on the 6th of May, I need to ensure that at least 24 hours before my exam, I speak only in English. I listen to a lot of English. I read in English if possible. As much as possible, I expose myself to the language. It's a kind of warm-up, because I'm preparing myself for the next day. So when I'm exposed to a lot of English and I'm listening, I'm speaking, like I call up friends and I only use English and not any other language, that will prep me up. I'm ready to face the exam day. So yes, so before getting on, I would also like to welcome everyone who's watching us live. A lot of good evenings. I've seen a good evening from Kuwait as well. So it's wonderful to know that you're watching us from different parts of the world. Yeah, Ramya, Elsa, Philip from Kuwait. Hi Ramya, hope you enjoyed this session today. Yeah, so we have Sahil watching. Hi. We have Andressa Tom. Hi. All right. So here is the first question of the day on screen. This is for all of you to answer. So if you can see the question, it says it's about part 1 of speaking, and the question is, how long should your answers to part 1 questions be? So there are 4 options given: A, B, C and D. In part 1 of speaking, if you're responding to the questions, how long should your responses be? Option A, it should be 1 word. Option B, 1 sentence. Option C, 2 to 3 sentences. Or option D, speak until the examiner stops you. Now it's your time to respond to this question. Part 1 of speaking, the initial half of the speaking where the examiner asks you a set of questions on familiar topics. Which one would you say is the right answer? Is it option A, B, C or D? So Roshni Vinod has shared C, option C as the right answer. Yes, Roshni has shared her response. Let's see the others' responses as well. Sham, what would you say? Which one would you choose as the right option here? Is it A, B, C or D?
I would choose C.
You would choose C.
Yeah,
all
2 to
right.
3 sentences.
2 to 3 sentences. All right. So Johnny says B, which means 1 sentence. Donna says C. Okay. Lijo Anthony says B, which again means a sentence. This is getting exciting and interesting because I can see different responses. We have a majority opting for C, which means 2 to 3 sentences, but at the same time we have 1 or 2 of them also vouching for option B, which is 1 sentence. Donna Thomas says 2 to 3 sentences. Thank you, Donna. Jaya says C. All right, keep the answers pouring in. How long should your response be? Let's say part 1 questions are all questions about familiar topics. Maybe if I give you some examples, okay, let's say the topic is travel, okay? So the question would be something like, do you like traveling?
Yes.
Okay, it's a personal question, right?
Yes.
So do you like traveling, Shyam?
Yeah, I absolutely love traveling. What I love about traveling is that you get to see new places, you get to experience new things all the time. And one of the best things that I do when I travel is listen to music and absorb the things that are around me, the environment. That is something that everyone should be. All
right. Okay, that's great. So meanwhile, I have a message from Nasir Khan. Hi Nasir, he sends, good evening ma'am, I'm from Pakistan. I would like to see your program. So welcome to our program, Nasir Khan, and I hope this really helps you as well. So Shyam has shared his opinion on, travel. So yes, so what is the answer? How long should your answers to part 1 questions be? Should it be just one word, one sentence, 2 to 3 sentences, or is the right answer option D, speak until the examiner stops you? So I can see that none of you have actually opted for option D, which is speak until the examiner stops you. All right. Because quite a few students actually feel that, that is the right method to follow. If a question is asked, they speak non-stop, they speak until the examiner puts in the next question. So, let me tell you, that would not be the right approach to answering part 1 questions. So, option D can be eliminated. Okay? So, if option D is eliminated, we have 3 options remaining. They are A, B and
C.
Yeah, C. So, which out of these would be the right answer? How long should my answer be? So, I have Ayman Siddiq Nuhas from Bangladesh. Hi, Ayman, I hope you're enjoying. Okay. Well, the right answer here is option C. Your answers should be 2 to 3 sentences long. Okay. So, no one-word answers. No. For instance, I asked Shyam, Shyam, do you like traveling? What if he says yes? Yeah. Or the possibility is no. Yeah. So that's a one word. If he just says yes, or if he just says a no, it's a one-word answer. Now, can you tell me, or can you just think why? You shouldn't be giving a one-word response. Do you have any idea, Shyam? Why would I say a candidate should not be giving a one-word response?
Because,
any guesses?
Yeah, I would guess it's because from a single word response, the examiner is not able to determine what he's supposed to for assessment, which is our language proficiency.
Yeah, that's true. Very true, Shyam. Because if you just say yes, or if you just say no, how as an examiner can I evaluate your language proficiency? Would I know you're a good speaker or no? No. All I can hear or listen to is a yes or a no. So that is the most simple reason for saying you should never concise your answer into a single word. And the same goes for the fact for one sentence. So if you follow option B, like we did have some responses where they said the answer is option B. So imagine, Shyam, you're going to answer the same question in a single sentence. How would you answer that? Do you like traveling?
Yes, I like traveling. Or
yeah.
No, I like traveling.
No, I don't like traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he might say, yes, I like traveling, or he might say, no, I don't like traveling. So that's a single sentence, right? But again, what has happened in this particular response? He's just added a word yes and no. And the remaining of it is a repeat of the question. Yes, I like traveling. Do you like traveling? Yes, I like traveling. Or do you like traveling? No, I don't like traveling, right? So you're not added anything much, just a word, but it becomes a sentence. So stay away from giving one sentence long answers. Instead, always frame your responses, and it should be from 2 to 3 sentences. And not longer, because if I speak longer, what will happen is the examiner is going to ask me the next question. Yeah, so that means I shouldn't be prolonging my response. Again, for a personal question like do you like traveling, you cannot speak a lot, right? You cannot give an entire essay.
No.
Yeah? So at this point, let's try some samples of part 1 speaking. Are you ready, Shyam?
I am absolutely.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Shyam's help while he gives his responses. We'll see how much of it is right and what are the errors, probably any suggestions. So this is your learning point. The tip here is your answer should be 2 to 3 sentences long. Okay. So whatever question I ask Shyam, he's going to try and expand the response in 2 or 3 sentences and not anything longer than that. And even when you give your answer for 2 to 3 sentences, you need to keep in mind that you don't go off topic. Okay, like for example, when I asked him, do you like traveling? He said yes, and he said, he gets an opportunity to look around himself and meet people, see new things.
Yes.
What if I say, yes, I love traveling, because travel is a hobby that many have. People travel to different countries across the world, and when you talk about countries, there are so many continents that we have. Like let's say Asia is one big continent, and we have Africa as another continent. And Africa, talking about Africa, it's called as a dark continent. And then what happens? I go off topic. Yeah. I started off with travel, but I'm jumping from one idea to the other. Now that's a big no. So don't talk about Africa when you're asked about travel and say, I actually spoke 2 to 3 sentences. That will not work. Okay, so let's find out. Let's see some samples that we can possibly extract from Shyam.
Okay.
So you can learn as you listen to him. At the same time, if any of you would like to give me your responses, you can just share it, type it onto comments, and I ensure that I'll read it out. So my first question, I'm going to ask certain questions, and the topic here is food. Okay. So my first question is, do you have a favorite food?
Yes, I absolutely have a favorite food. My favorite food is a chicken shawarma, and every once in a while, I would say once or twice, I have a shawarma in a week.
Okay, so he already spoke about one of his favorite food item. He mentioned a food item and he added information. So what did he add? He added something like, I have it every, what did you say?
Every once in a while, or
every
twice?
once in a while, or like he can probably say twice a week.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a question, let me interrupt. There's a question by Jessie Rachel John, and she has asked, ma'am, could you please tell us the difference between IELTS and OET speaking? Oh, that's quite unexpected question. I didn't expect an OET related question in this session, but I would always be happy to answer it because both of these exams are really close to my heart, and I love teaching and preparing for both of these exams. Of course, when it comes to IELTS speaking and OET speaking, Jessie, thank you for the question. That's very relevant. I'm sure many watching out right now would also have a similar query if they're not currently preparing for one of these exams. Well, there is a world of difference between the IELTS and OET speaking test. The first one would definitely be that OET is specific to certain professions. OET speaking test is specific to professions. But IELTS speaking or IELTS exam is something that anyone can attempt. Let's say I have a background in journalism or literature, or Shyam has a background in accounts, or let's say management. He can take up the IELTS. But being from the management or the literature or the commerce or let's say any other field, science field, maybe just biology, botany, zoology, you cannot take up the OET because again it is specific to medical professions alone. So one big difference is that. So you have to fall under a category of 12 professions that are listed by OET, and if you fall under one of these, you can take up the OET. Okay, and the other difference, because it's only about speaking, when it comes to IELTS, you have 3 parts, okay, and these are all general questions, like the question I asked Shyam about food or about travel. So that's part 1 of speaking, and similarly in 2 and 3, you have quite general topics or questions that anyone can answer. So your general knowledge is not tested. But what else is tested? It is your
language proficiency.
Language proficiency that is tested. Okay. But when it comes to OET speaking, what happens is you're given a scenario.
Yes.
Okay, like a medical scenario. You are working in a hospital, or probably it's a home visit. So whatever different setting could be possible. Let's say if I'm a nurse and I'm attending the exam.
Yes.
As a nurse, I could be working in a hospital ward.
Yeah.
I could be working in a clinic. I could be in a community health center. So one of these settings would be given and I have to perform accordingly, like I'm talking to a real patient.
Yes.
So it's a conversation. Okay, and in this conversation I'm going to talk to the interlocutor who will take up the role of the patient, and I as a candidate will take up the medical profession. So if I'm writing OET for medicine, I'll take up the role of the doctor. If I'm taking OET pharmacy, I'm taking the pharmacist. That's a big difference. Okay, so these big differences are definitely there, but both these tests, I would say the similarity is that both these tests do not test our knowledge,
just our language proficiency,
how well you can use English. Alright, so there's a question from Labna, and she says, I have a question for IELTS speaking. Is there something that we should not add first during the conversation? Interesting, Labna, that's a good question, and I have one of our tip coming up with that itself, so let's see. So here on screen I have the next question for you, question number 2. Okay, what is the question? Which out of these is right about part 2 of speaking? Okay, so there are 3 parts, part 1, part 2 and part 3. So what happens in part 2 of speaking? Sham, you're actually given a cue card.
Yes.
Okay. And the candidate is also given 1 minute time to prepare. And the candidate can speak for up to 2 minutes on a topic given in the cue card.
Yes.
So, which out of these, when you perform in your part 2 of speaking, is right? So there are 4 options: A, B, C and D. Option A says you should follow the order given in the card. So you have 3 or 4 points given and you should follow the same order. Option B says you should begin with a very catchy introduction. So this is where I connect Labna's question. Is there something that we should start the conversation with?
Yes.
So option B says you should begin with a very catchy introduction. Option C says you can ask for a change in the card. Okay, let's say, Sham, I've given you a card talk about your first day at school.
Yeah, you were giving me a card for the first day at school.
Yeah, at school.
So I would be speaking about...
would you say...
please change this.
please change this card.
Switch the cue card.
Or something like, if I say, Sham, describe a bad day at school. And probably Sham was a candidate who's always been, a student who's always been really, really good and smart. So he's never had to get in trouble. So would he say that, oh, I've never had to get in trouble, so please change the card?
No.
Okay, so that's one. So option C says you can ask for a change in cue card, and option D says try telling it like a story. Okay, so now it's open to you. I want you to respond. Christo John says C. You can ask for a change in cue card. Okay. Donna Thomas says, I guess A. Which is right? That's a question. You should follow the order given in the card. So Donna says option A is correct. Okay. What are the other responses? What out of these should be done in part 2 of speaking? Okay, that's a question. Option A, you should follow the order given in the card. Option B, you should begin with a very catchy introduction. Option C says you can ask for a change in a cue card. And option D says try telling it like a story. Roshni has answered. Roshni Vinod says D. Yeah, so Donna already has guessed it as A. Christo says C. Okay. Looks like, pretty much like all the options are coming up.
Yeah.
Tonya Mariam Thomas. Her option is A. You should follow the order. Okay. Sunita Ranjit has given us an answer and she says option B. Yeah. Lakshmi Dipu says B. Jinu Joseph says B. Sham, if you could read the other responses. Who are the others who are responding? Jaya Thomas.
Yeah, we have Tony Maria Thomas who has given A. Sunita Ranjit has given B. And succeedingly, Sunita, after Sunita we have Jaya Thomas. Hello Jaya, you have given B. And Varada S. Sundar, her answer is D. Tell it like a story.
Try telling it like a story. Interesting. Bini Varghese says A. Divya Jose says A. Alright, this is getting really, really interesting because almost all the options have come up, right?
Yeah, we have a variety of answers. Every single option is there.
Yeah, most of it.
Yeah.
Majority have answered B, which is you should begin with a very catchy introduction. Some have answered it as you should follow the order given in the card. And let's say D says try telling like a story. So Varada says try telling it like a story. Tramila Vasam says B again. You should begin with a very, very catchy introduction. Okay. Alright. So interesting responses following. I would say, in these options that I've given you, we can stick to 2 right answers at least.
Yes.
Okay. So Dolly Thomas says A. Lijo Anthony says A. Okay. Saumya says B, which means you should begin with a very catchy introduction. Nayana Raj says D. Try telling it like a story. Okay. Thankfully, not many have answered C because that option can be eliminated. You can never ask for a change in the cue card. Okay, so whatever card is given to you, you have to respond based on that.
Yes.
Yeah, no matter whether you actually read. Now this is one area where students actually falter. Let's say a card comes like, talk about your favorite book. Do you have a favorite book, Shyam?
Yes, I do have a favorite book.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite book is an inspirational book written by David Goggins called, the name is...
You can't recall right
No,
now.
I can't recall it right now. That is something that I spoke at the very beginning about.
Yes.
Anxiety.
Yeah, he's quite anxious right now when I'm asking him a question, so he can't recall
Now
the
it's
book.
come back to me. It's called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
So that's his favorite book. Now he's somebody probably who reads a lot. Now imagine you fall under that category, where I know a lot of students who fall in this category who don't like reading, probably who've not read much. So in case you're a person like... I have a friend of mine who's never read a book because she hates reading. So once I happened to ask her, do you have a favorite book? And she's like, books, I don't read it at all. So imagine she gets in the IELTS exam, the question as, talk about your favorite book. Would she ask for a change in card? No, you cannot. So if you cannot ask for a change in card, what should you be doing? I mean, you haven't read books at all. What do you think I should be doing, Shyam? Any idea?
Maybe we could divert from reading to a completely different topic to show, say I haven't been reading much lately, so I would say I have seen movies that are based on books. That is where my interests lie. And
okay, that's a possibility. That's an interesting possibility. Now what has Shyam said? He said, I don't read much, but I've seen a movie that's an adaptation of a book, or that's based on a book. Now that is good because you're trying to connect it, saying you don't read, that's one response, but at the same time of a movie that's based on a book, so that would be pretty close to the book itself, and you start talking about it. That's a good possibility. There's another possibility, okay, and that is you can actually create a story. You can fabricate. So they're not going to check whether you actually are somebody who's into reading. Do you read books? Have you actually read the book? That's not the question there. The question is, are you able to talk in English? Okay? And can you sustain your speaking for up to 2 minutes? That's what is being assessed. Which means I can just create something. So probably, let's say a friend of mine has shared her experience of reading a book. Now I have a friend who's crazy about reading and she keeps talking about Harry Potter books. So I know from her experience what Harry Potter book is all about. So I'm going to create it as my story. And then what do I tell the examiner? Oh, this is book I really love and it's Harry Potter, and I start talking about it. So one option is what Shyam said, you try connecting it to something that you know and then you associate it and start speaking about it. Or you just create something. Okay, so that is a huge possibility when it comes to IELTS speaking. See, it's not a test of your integrity. They're not checking how honest you are, what kind of a person you are. No, what is being tested is only your language proficiency. So, if you feel you've gotten a card that you're really not really sure of what to say, create a story because you have a minute's time to prepare. Okay, so yes, of course, option C can be eliminated. Now option A, you should follow the order given at the card. Now that is an option that some of them have actually answered, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so if option A says you should follow the order in the card, the answer would be no. There is nothing as you should be following the order. You can change the order, okay? So that's your flexibility. It's ideal to follow the order, but if required, you can also change the order. For instance, you could begin with the last question and then go on to the first. Up to you, okay? So option A can also be eliminated. So we can stick on to 2 right answers from this. One is option B, okay? That's a possibility. Again, you should begin with a very catchy introduction. Okay, so say something really interesting, exciting, and begin your conversation. I mean, you're speaking based on that. And the other is option D, that is?
Try telling it like a story.
Try telling it like a story. Okay, so we have Rupa, she says, good morning, I'm in Trinidad. Oh, I think it's morning there. She says, good morning. Hi Rupa, we have, I mean, it's evening here right now. So Anyway, thank you for your good wishes in the morning. I'm glad to know that it's early morning and you're still watching our live session. So that's a huge, a solace, I would say. Thank you for watching from Trinidad. Okay, Rupa says option B. Yes, Rupa, option B and option D. That is, you can begin with a catchy introduction and at the same time also try telling it like a story. Okay? Well, so that brings me to another practice. So I've already told you that you need to tell it like a story and have an interesting beginning. So let me show you a cue card. So on screen we have a card. Okay? I hope you can see it on screen. Talk about a time. Can we have the card, please? It says talk about a time when someone helped you. Card number 3. Yeah. And there are 4 questions here. It says who it was. Question number 2, what was the help given? Question number 3, why was the help given? And question number 4, what did you feel about it? So this is what I mean by a cue card. You have a main topic there which says talk about a time when someone helped you, and then you have 4 sub questions. So in a minute's time you need to try keeping these 2 things in mind. 1, have something catchy to begin your talk for up to 2 minutes. At the same time tell it like a story. So the idea is I don't have to begin talking about this with who it was, like who helped me. That's the first question on the card. I can also probably begin with how did I feel about it. Okay, like I can say there was not another moment where I felt so much blessed. That's how I felt about that situation, right? So I begin my conversation there, or I begin my story there, and then I connect the entire point. Okay, so at this point, let's see. I'll give Shyam this particular task. He will be preparing for this card in his mind. Like I'll give him a minute's time. Let him prepare on the card. Meanwhile, I want you guys to focus on the card, and it says, talk about a time when someone helped you. Now, probably, you could have an experience where nobody has really helped you, but you are the one who helps people all the time. I have a lot of friends like that who are so kind-hearted, who are so helpful, who are so outgoing that, whoever it be, they try to do whatever help possible. But probably they never get any help that they really require on time. Okay? So if you're somebody like that and, this card says, talk about a time when someone helped you, and most of the time you help people. So what you can do, like I said, you can create it as your story. So just swap yourself there. So you put in yourself into the other person's shoes and think that it is the other person who has extended the help. Okay? So if the other person has extended the help to me, I'm going to create that as a story and speak. So that's one option. Okay? And like I said, you don't have to follow the order strictly. So question number 1, 2, 3, 4, you can begin with any of these. Alright? Okay. So I'm not going to test Shyam. This is not a test for him. This is just to give you a sample, and with the sample I want to actually try and show you what are the things you should be careful about when you speak in part 2, that is you're giving answers at length. What are the things you should stay away from? What are the things you should include in your speaking? Okay, so let's see the sample. Are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, so guys, let's time him. He has around 2 minutes to speak on this, and so Shyam, your time starts now.
Okay, so one of the times, the most important time in my life was a few years back when my mother had a heart attack, and my best friend Arjun was with me throughout the whole thing. From the beginning till the end, he was with me to console me when we were taking my mother to the hospital in the ambulance. By the time we had reached the hospital, he was always there. He had provided me with emotional support, as well as I needed financial help immediately. So he was always there. He brought breakfast, lunch, and dinner for both myself and my mother, and he was such a huge blessing for me at that time. And the reason we had such a relationship played a huge part in why he helped me, because we were not just friends. We still are friends, but we were more like brothers. So every single time that somebody asks me for help, or every single time that I think about him, I always remember why it is that he decided to help me, or how blessed I am to have a friend like him. And every single time I think of the worst moment in my life, with this very moment, I think the relationship that we had. I'm a firm believer that every relationship in life is very important. And we're going on about 9 years since we first met, and his help.
Thank you, Shyam. That's close to 2 minutes that he spoke. Yeah. He's heaving a big sigh of relief right now because he's done with the 2 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you've noticed, he actually, told it like a story, right?
Yes.
And then when he found that I was not stopping him, which meant that he had some time remaining for the 2-minute time to complete, he kept adding on points. Like you spoke about how long you were friends with him and you were more like brothers and things like that. So that's a good idea. So what you should try and do is maintain your speech for 2 minutes, and even if you tell it like a story, there is a possibility that you have a few more seconds remaining.
Yes.
The examiner has not stopped you yet, which means you have more time, and you can add something more relevant to it.
Yes.
Okay, like he added that we've been friends for 9 years. So he added that, and imagine I don't stop him even then.
Yes.
So probably he can add something more like I'm still in touch with him, or he still visits me once in a week, or we hang out together, and keep adding certain points there. At the same time, he should ensure that he doesn't go off topic.
Yes.
Off tangent is something that you shouldn't do. Okay, so that was a pretty good sample of how you can approach a cue card. Create a story. So here he had a situation where his mother had a heart attack, and it was this friend who helped him out financially, physically being there, being supportive emotionally. So these are the terms that you can use as you describe, and in detail you could say about what exact help he has done. Now if you say physical help, you could also be descriptive there, saying he drove us all the way to the hospital.
Yes.
Or like he said, he was the one who brought me breakfast, lunch and dinner. So being descriptive there. So don't just say short things like he was very helpful, full stop. You need to be descriptive as to how or what help was given, because that is exactly the topic of the card. Talk about a time when someone helped you. So the focus is more on the kind of help that happened and the relation that you share with the person who has helped you.
Yes.
Now in Shyam's case, he was helped by his friend, right? Somebody he knew for almost 9 years. Can you imagine a stranger, a total stranger helping you? That's a possibility, right?
Yes.
Many of us have such instances where probably, we are on the road or we are in a shop and we need help immediately. Something that is required, and that's the need of the moment.
Yes.
And you don't have anyone around you, but then a total stranger turns up and extends help. And that has been, many times a blessing for us. So maybe, you can, even use that in your response. Now, Jesse has asked on the question, how the IELTS speaking is being recorded. Okay, so yes, the IELTS speaking, your entire test is recorded. It's audio recorded. So the examiner will give you instructions saying, I'm going to record this over audio. So, and the recording will start now. So they keep you informed that the whole thing is being recorded. And they record it, and till the end of your speaking, that is up to 15 minutes, the recording happens. At the end of the speaking, once the examiner says thank you, that's the end of your speaking, the recording stops. Which means the recording is nothing else but a proof of your performance on the speaking test. Now there is a possibility. Now what? You might not be really happy with your score once you get your results.
Yes.
Yeah, like you performed really well. You were expecting a 7.5. And imagine you end up getting a 6 or a 6.5. Yeah. So you're pretty sure, no, you performed really well. So that's when you can also think of giving for a reevaluation. And when you give for a reevaluation, when you request for a reevaluation, then you have this audio recording that is taken, and it is considered by another examiner. Another examiner assesses your speaking once again to check your score. So if there is a change in score, of course, you get a better score in your speaking, or it could come back as no change in the score. Yeah, but that is the main reason why your entire speaking is being recorded. And at the same time, and at the same time it's also as proof for the, let's say, of the performance of the examiner itself.
Yes.
Because the examiner is also being evaluated, Jesse. The examiner is also being evaluated. And as the examiner is being evaluated, they're checking if the examiner is performing the right way. Is the examiner giving you scores based on the right assessment factors? So it's a test of the examiner as well. Okay, so you can be relaxed. It's not only for you that the entire speaking is being recorded, it's also for the examiner. Okay, so Jesse, Rachel, that's your question. Now Benny has added, a friend in need is a friend indeed. I have received help from many friends and I would like to talk about a situation where I lost my purse on the bus last month on my way to office. To my surprise, a friend of mine was on the same bus and he paid for my bus ticket. That's really sweet. Now he's put up a response there. So probably he wanted to share his take on or how he would present the topic, and that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Benny. Sharu Abraham has asked another question. So before I read out Sharu's question, I have something to share with all of you. We have an interesting app that is called as Medcity IELTS app. Okay, and this app has almost, or like I could say, over 50 hours of recorded videos. Now it's free to download. You have free video lessons, you have free practice materials, you have it available in different packages like the All Skills Pack or individual packages like the listening, reading, writing, speaking, or even a complete IELTS grammar package. And if you are really happy after after downloading the free app, you can just make a small payment and buy the paid version. And what happens when you take the paid version? You have access for 1 full year. And we keep updating our videos regularly, and you have newer video lessons to watch, strategy videos, speaking samples, feedback, tips, practice materials, and lots more. Podcasts even, to help you prepare for your listening test. So that's Medcity IELTS app for you. If you haven't used the app yet, go download the app now. It's available on Android and the iOS version. Okay. So Sharu Abraham has another question. Is there a video recording for UKVI IELTS speaking test? Definitely. So Veena, thank you. She's already answered that question. She says yes. So yes, there is a recording for the UKVI IELTS test as well. Not only an audio recording. The UKVI exam is completely video recorded at the same time. Okay. And Veena's question is, how important is eye contact? Well, Veena, my answer to that question would be, definitely it's important to an extent. But relax, because the examiner might not be maintaining eye contact. The examiner has a set of questions to read out. So most of the time the examiner would be looking at the paper to check what the next question is, and at the same time the examiner would also be evaluating the candidate. So Shyam, can you evaluate and read and do everything at the same time, maintain eye contact? Not be possible. So the examiner might not actually be looking at you. The examiner would be making notes, writing down points, because scoring you on your performance. So if you can maintain eye contact, Veena, especially if it is part 2 of speaking, where like Shyam answered, you're talking about, or like how Benny has shared a response, you're telling a small story about the cue card that you've just received. That's when you can try and maintain eye contact. But otherwise, you really don't have to. But it's always good because it shows that you're confident. So try maintaining eye contact if possible. Geeta Devdas has asked a question, and her question is, how is speaking marked in IELTS? Well, and even her another question is, how IELTS bands are calculated. Okay, now Geeta, the IELTS speaking test is evaluated based on 4 assessment factors. And these 4 are, of course, fluency, you have lexical resources, then you have grammatical range and accuracy, and you have pronunciation. So based on these 4 assessment factors, the examiner evaluates you. So there is equal importance to all the 4 assessment factors, and there is a detailed band descriptor. Now Geeta, that's available as a public version. You can download it if you type on Google IELTS speaking band descriptor, and you get a PDF that's available.
Yes.
So you have band scores from 0 to 9, and you have these 4 assessment factors there, and you can get to see like what you do across these 4 parameters, what band score you will get. So that is clearly mentioned there. All right. And Sharu's next question is body language important? What do you think, Sham? Do you think body language is important when it comes to speaking? The speaking test? The IELTS speaking test?
I think not really. Body language doesn't play much of a role. I think it is much more concentrated on the speaking factor, which determines the language proficiency of the individual. So, what do you think? I would like you to give your opinion on that.
Yeah, okay. Regarding body language, like he said, it doesn't play a major role. But let's say, I'm a person who loves, using my hands when I speak. You can see that I'm using a lot of my, hands, and there are gestures. So I feel that comfortable when I use my hands, when I feel I can open up more, I feel more confident, I can express myself. So I'm using body language not as a means to get a higher score, but that's my way of speaking, and that gives me confidence. Now there would be quite a lot of others who would probably clasp their hands, like they would probably hold it tight.
Yes.
Okay. Or in different ways. You can hold it in different ways. So there are people who hold it in different ways because probably they like to keep their hands close to their body and speak. Now if that is how you gain confidence and that makes you speak, that enables you to speak better, you can always go for that. So Sharu, body language is not very important. You don't have body language as an assessment factor, but try not to have these awkward gestures or something seriously, the examiner thinks that something is seriously wrong with you. I mean, you can't show certain unwanted gestures probably. Yeah. So Geeta Devdas next question is, are hand gestures allowed in IELTS speaking? Of course, Geeta, you can use hands, maybe you can use your eyebrows, you can smile while you speak. Okay, so that shouldn't be a problem at all. There's another question by Jibin. So Jibin says, is it necessary to note down points on the given paper? Sham, if you were a candidate preparing for speaking, you're in the test exam hall. So would you want to make notes on a paper that's given to you?
Absolutely. I would definitely make notes on the given paper.
Why?
Because I would like to look back on it in case that I get stuck or run into a wall or something, so that I can connect back to the point that I had written down and then get back on track.
Yeah, exactly. So like Sham would, love making notes, probably like he said, as you speak. Now, I'm sure as you were speaking, there were a lot of things you wanted to say, but you missed out,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yes, that's exactly what will happen on the test day. Now, you have this beautiful story in your head and you're ready for the card because you've practiced it in your class. But as you speak, there could be a moment when you're completely blank. You don't know what to say next. You're very confident, you've prepared, you're sure you have good language, but you go blank all of a sudden. And that's when these notes, so Jibin, that's the answer to your question, and that's when these notes actually will help you. So if you just refer the notes that you've made, you can easily recall the points and you can continue speaking. So that will help you as a guide. It'll help you stay on track in case you forget things. So there's nothing wrong with making notes, especially in part 2 of speaking. That's where you're allowed to make notes. In part 1 and part 2, you don't have to make notes and you're not allowed to make notes. Veena's question. Will I lose marks if I give negative replies like, no, I don't like watching movies? That's interesting. So Sham, if I ask you this question, do you like watching movies?
I would say I love watching movies, but if I had given an answer like this, I think that would be acceptable.
So imagine, this is just an imaginary situation. I too love movies, but what if I'm going to say, like Veena said, I say, no, I hate movies. I really don't like movies. One big reason is because it takes away 2 to 3 hours of your time. I could be so much more productive if I had those 2 hours with me. Maybe I could cook something for my family, or I could take rest, or I could read a book probably, or I could just go out for work. So why should I engage myself in 2 hours in something that I feel is not fruitful? So I can say no. Veena, my answer to your question is, you're absolutely safe to say yes or no. You will have no negative marks if you say no, I don't like movies, no, I don't like to read books, no, I don't like to travel, no, I don't have a favorite color. So that's fine. But the only thing is, this happens in part 1 of speaking, that you should try and expand your answers to 2 to 3 sentences, right? So you cannot just say, no, I don't like watching movies, and stop.
You have to justify.
You have to justify. You say something more. Say why you don't like movies. Like I said, I feel I'm wasting 2 hours. But guys, I love watching movies. I don't mind wasting 2 or 3 hours if I get an opportunity to watch movies anyway. Well, yeah. So Maya says informative session. Thank you. Margaret John has given us a big line of thumbs up. So that's great. So that really shows that she's enjoying the session. Thank you for being online and watching our live session. Okay, did I miss out any questions as I was explaining? No, I think I have most of the questions. Alright, so I have one last question to share with all of you. So your question is on screen. We're moving to part 3 of speaking, and that's the last part of speaking. Okay, and the question is, how should you answer part 3 of speaking? You can see 4 options there. Option A says, keep talking everything you know about the topic. Okay. Option B says, give long answers with examples. Option C says, speak until the next question is asked. And option D says, short and to the point. I shouldn't give long answers, it should only be short ones. Okay, there are 4 options here, A, B, C and D. Which do you think is the right answer to this? How should you answer part 3 of speaking? It's time to give your responses. Do you go for option A? Do you want to go with option B? Do you think you should speak until the next question is asked, which is option C? Or do you think you should give short, to the point answers? Alright, so the answers have come in. Sharu says B, Roshni says B, Veena says B, Reba says B. Okay, long answers with examples. Jibin says B. That looks like a clean victory. Everyone is saying a B. Pramila Rai says B. Okay. Anyone else? Do you think you should keep talking, everything you know about the topic? Dolly Thomas says B. Reba says extended answers with instances. Yeah. Sunita Ranjit says D. That is short and to the point. Febin Joseph says B and C. So Febin feels it should be long answers with examples, and C, which means speak until the next question is asked. Febin, interesting. That's an interesting response. You said B and C. Okay. How do you think you should be answering part 3? Now let me tell you that part 3 of speaking, the examiner is going to ask you more general questions. So it's not going to be about yourself. Like I asked, do you like to travel? Do you like watching movies? Do you like to read? It's all about you. Or describe someone who has helped you. It's about you. But when it comes to part 3 of speaking, it's no more about you. It's more general. Okay. So a lot of them. Vaishnav says B. Amal says B. Geeta asks, should I give examples in my answers? Lakshmi Nair says B. Pramila Vasam says D. Jaya Thomas says D. Veena asks, in part 3, am I supposed to give examples from personal questions? Okay. Oh, you mean from personal experience, do you? Okay. Okay, so we have a majority of them opting for option B. At the same time, we have a few who have opted for option D, and we have a Febin who has opted for B and C. Okay, so let's look at what the right answer is. Let's eliminate first. So I would first eliminate option A. Okay, that is keep talking about everything you know regarding the topic. Now imagine the question asked in part 3 is, do people in your country love shopping online, or do people in your country prefer online shopping? The question is about people in your country. It's not about you. I mean, they're not asking, do you like online shopping? Okay. So if I speak about everything I know, I'm going to speak about we have a lot of online shopping sites available. Then I list it out. What do I say? We have Myntra,
Snapdeal,
Flipkart, all those.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is talking about everything you know about online shopping. Well, that is a big no. The question is very specific here, and the question is, do people in your country prefer online shopping? So you have to talk about their preferences. Alright? So never keep talking everything you know about the topic. Talk to the question. Be focused, be specific. Okay? So option A can be eliminated.
Yes.
At the same time, I would also eliminate the last option, option D, which says
short and to the point.
Short and to the point. Okay. Now what happens with short and to the point is it really doesn't meet the requirement of part 3. Do people in your country love online shopping? If it is short, I say, oh yes, they do. Or I could just say, no, they don't. Now what happens is again, the examiner cannot evaluate my proficiency based on this. I just said, no, they don't. Now if I feel that no, I should be able to justify, right? I need to give a reason for it.
Yes.
Why do I say no or why do I say yes? So that will also help me answer 2 other questions. One is Veena's question about using personal examples in part 3. Next is Jessie Rachel John. She has asked, should we use only formal English? Geeta Dedas has asked, how can I join in your IELTS course? So Geeta, we'll be sending you the details soon, so you can just check out. Okay, we'll send you as a comment here how you can join. You can get in touch with us over phone. You can get onto our website. You'll get to know of all our wonderful packages we have online plus offline courses available. Okay, so Jessie, yes, I wouldn't say it should be too formal or informal. It should be semi-formal, because there would be instances where you have to, when you're describing personal experiences, you might have to use a little, some of the informal words. But that doesn't mean you should be, over friendly with your examiner and say, hey, come on, man, that really doesn't matter. I mean, you can't be that. Yeah, so you need to hit that right chord. You should be somewhere in between where you're not too formal, like you say, yes sir, I love watching movies sir, that's my favorite hobby sir, and that's being too formal. So you need to
too informal.
Too informal. So strike the balance and be somewhere in between. All right. And so my answer to this question that you have on screen, what's the right answer? I would say the right answer out of these is option B. That is long answers with examples. Okay. So many of them had really opted for option B. And definitely that's the right response. Your answer should be long. Now there is no sentence count as such. But let's say you give 2 to 3 different ideas there. Plus an example to support whatever you say. Okay. Now why Febin I would eliminate option C is because it says speak until the next question is asked. Now, part C is one area where the examiner can actually challenge you. Okay, that means challenge your response. Now, let's say Shyam says, oh, people in my country love shopping, and he starts speaking about it. Now, the examiner can ask additional questions.
Yes.
Oh, really? Why do you say so? I mean, how can you be so sure about it? They can get argumentative at times.
Yes.
Okay, which means if you continue speaking, you're going to speak a lot of different things, and there's a high chance that you might go off topic. So, give a long answer, give an example to substantiate your response, and stop at that.
Yes.
So that he asks you the next question. So yes, the answer is option B. Now, I have a question from Sharu again, and he asks, how can I learn to use idioms in speaking? Sharu, of course, using idiomatic language is good because it will boost your score. And a lot of native speakers use idioms when they speak in English. But do not force yourself into learning idioms and using them, because if it doesn't sound natural, it might be difficult. Okay, so you can learn idioms, of course. How to have clean usages of idioms can be learned from the real context. So probably watching movies will help.
Yes.
Okay, watching talk shows will help in English. So you know when and how they use certain idioms. And if you feel it's natural and you have an opportunity to use it, you can definitely go ahead with using it. And we have another question by Veena again. It says, pronunciation is important in speaking, but is accent important? Okay, so Veena, I did say pronunciation is one of the 4 assessment factors. So you have to be clear. That means intelligible. They should be able to understand what you've said. So the way you stress certain words or you give a pause, everything is important when it comes to pronunciation. But accent is not important. So if you have an American accent or you have a British accent or any other accent for that matter, that's good for you. I mean, you can use it, no problem. But if you're somebody who doesn't have an accent, like I think I speak more or less neutral, I don't have an accent as such. So if it's a neutral accent, that's also accepted. But what you should stay clear of, or clear away from, or steer clear of, is being influenced with a lot of mother tongue usages, or you have heavy influence of your first language. That could cost you your scores. Okay, but otherwise accent does not have any additional scoring. Okay, so Benny says useful tips, Ronima informative, very good, thank you. Neeta Harshan has asked, if asked about an international celebrity, can I select someone dead? Wow, Neeta, yes. Is it Michael Jackson that you're thinking about? Okay, international celebrity. Michael Jackson is dead, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, just to check. Alright, so sorry about that if I'm hurting anyone's sentiments out there. That was not intended. It says, can I talk, if asked about an international celebrity, can I select someone dead? Of course you can. It depends on the cues given there. Again, even if it says, when would you like to meet that person? You can always say he's dead and I wouldn't be able to meet that person anymore, which is totally fine. Okay, but you can go ahead with choosing somebody who's dead, an international celebrity. Okay, I think we are almost to the end of our live session on IELTS speaking tips. Roshni has asked a question, can I include personalized examples in part 3? Roshni, stay away from personal examples. Like let's say if it's about online shopping, about people in your country. Imagine me answering it as saying, wow, yes, people in my country love online shopping because my aunt shops every day, and my neighbor is also very good at online shopping. We actually have a competition and all those things. It's personal, right? So that will not help the purpose. It will not serve. So stay clear of all, personal examples. Make it general. Okay, keep it general. Well, that was interesting. A lot more questions pouring in. Probably we'll not be able to include all of these questions, but it's so nice to know that you have so many things to ask us. Like Geeta asked in the session, if you want to enroll for our online or our offline IELTS courses, just get in touch with us and we'll give you all the information. Meanwhile, go download our Medcity IELTS app. Thank you so much for joining us in our live session. It was wonderful today. Thank you.